Inspired by Apple and Steve Jobs and disillusioned with business school and the education system, Carl Pei felt different from a young age. Motivated by this, he dropped out of university and embarked on a career in marketing and branding. However, through a long-held appreciation for good design, Carl was inevitably going to end up within a career related to hardware. Carl and his business partner formed the new venture OnePlus in 2013 and grew a real successful mobile phone empire out of Shenzhen, China, but operating globally. And more recently, he's embarked on doing it all again with another hardware venture product company, Nothing, who have this brilliant strapline of making technology fun again, which kind of says it all about the purpose and mission of the organization. Carl is a very endearing and considered personality with a clear burning desire to create world-class products and evolve how humans interact with technology. We talk about Carl's forecast for the adoption of AI, ChatGPT, and why he's not worried about the impact that AI is going to have on people's jobs in the labor market. Plus, we also talk about starting a hardware company and the mechanics and plumbing behind that, and what boxes need to be ticked to take technology adoption into the mainstream. Really was a fascinating conversation. It's Carl Pei. Carl Pei, thank you so much for coming on the Tech Leaders podcast.
Thank you for having me.
No problem at all. I've been really excited about this one. We've not had a hardware guy on before. Can you believe that? 69 shows in, and we've had all software people and journalists and things, but not many hardware.
There's very few of us in the world.
That's so true. Yeah, that's so bizarre, though, isn't it? Why is that? It's bizarre. But look, so I'm really excited about unpacking this because I'm fascinated to hear about the challenges of growing the businesses you've been involved with and stuff. Because there's so much to think about when you're building a hardware firm, I'm sure. And I'm also curious about your interest in design. I understand you were inspired by Steve Jobs, and there's so much more as well. Obviously, that's come out in the research. So yeah, really looking forward to chatting. But let's start with this one, Carl. Obviously, we're a technology and business podcast. What does good leadership mean to you?
I think leadership means a lot of different things, but if you distill it down to its core, it's probably winning. And what I mean by that is when you as a company win, then the entire team and all your stakeholders benefit. The team has fun, we learn, we hopefully make some really good impact in the world. And I think the morale of a team really, really increases when you keep leading them to victory. So I think at its core, it's about winning. You can be nice and have like a family-like environment in your company, but if at the end of the day, the company is not around anymore, none of that really matters.
Yeah. So it's about being ruthless then, essentially. Was that what you're saying?
I don't think you have to be ruthless to win, but you have to make fewer mistakes than everybody else. You have to be right more often than your competition to win over time.
Yeah, that makes sense. No, I think that's absolutely right. I think you have to have you have to be motivated. You kind of have to be the most committed person in the room almost to be the leader, don't you? I think. And you have to be committed to winning, essentially.
I think so. I think you need to see it as a responsibility. It's your responsibility to lead the company to victory, but I don't think you should be the most kind of committed person in the room. Of course, you are by default if you're the founder, but if you're the only one that's committed, then the company will never get anywhere. I think the entire team has to have the same level of commitment.
How do you get your sort of peers and the people around you into that way of thinking then, to be as committed as you are? How do you inspire people around you?
We're still working on this. I think at its core, it goes back to the company culture. But we're a very young company. We're still less than 2.5 years old. So a lot of our culture is, so to speak, defined by war, or the culture is defined by us just doing stuff. And I think when you start off with a really big vision and you want to challenge some of the biggest companies and industries in the world, then you do get a certain profile of people who want to be a part of that.
Sure.
And you also a different type of profile of people who don't want to be a part of that, and that's fine. But I think if you're really clear about what you're trying to do and what kind of people you need along the journey, then that's the first step to building that team. And then always just communicating where we're going. How's it going? Where are we going? What's the significance of that? I think those are tools to help you along the way.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. So let's rewind a little bit then, Carl. I'm keen to go back to the beginning. So I understand you were born in China, but you grew up in the US and also in Europe. Can you talk us through your formative years? And when you were a young man, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Yeah, I think because I traveled a lot, we moved around a lot when I was younger. So we left China when I was 4 years old. And then we moved to the States, and then we moved to Stockholm, Sweden when I was 6. So, and even within Sweden, our family moved around a couple of times. So I think in hindsight, I feel like I lacked a bit of kind of safety and security by always moving around, having to make a lot of new friends, and also feeling like an outsider because I was from a different country, and I was still getting used to the new culture and the new norms when I was younger. Maybe that led to kind of a sense of inadequacy, that I was not as good as everybody else, and therefore I had to kind of prove myself by doing more than everybody else. But I was quite influenced by whatever movie I was watching when I was a kid. So there was a point in time where I watched a couple of Bruce Lee movies, and I really wanted to become a kung fu teacher. It looked really badass. And then there was another time I wanted to be a policeman. So there was a lot of different things I wanted to be. And because I didn't know what a business person was, I didn't know what a manager was. But my vision of what that was basically somebody in a suit sitting in a really nice office, corner office, with their feet on the table. At one point, I said, okay, that's also an interesting career move.
Yeah, sure. Back to your Bruce Lee days. Are you still into combat sports at all? Do you do that? Do you watch like UFC and MMA and stuff? Are you into that kind of thing?
I don't really watch sports, but I like to do sports to keep healthy.
Yeah,
So
sure.
I've been training Thai boxing for a year, but I'm not that good. I'm not that good.
It's a very difficult thing to get good at, I think, isn't it?
Yeah,
You grew up in the US then. How old were you when you moved to Europe then, Carl?
6.
6, right. Okay. So you kind of, most of your formative years were spent in Sweden then, yeah, I suppose.
Yeah,
So talk us through I know you went to college, you dropped out because it wasn't for you, and then you ended up basically getting a job where you were pursuing a career in marketing initially. Talk us through why you dropped out of university and why you went in the direction of marketing and branding.
my parents were quite busy when I was younger, and they bought me a computer, and we had really high-speed internet. So a lot of my upbringing was on the internet. I learned a lot on the internet. Spent many, many hours. I started making websites since I was 12 years old. And some of those websites got pretty big. I was selling advertising on my websites. And so while I was going to school, I kind of had this other parallel life that none of my friends could relate to, but I also had a parallel kind of friends on the internet that we just met online, other entrepreneurs, and we talked to each other on MSN Messenger and whatnot. And I always felt this kind of whenever I tried to tell my friends about these things in school, nobody engaged. It was just like blank stares back at me.
Yeah.
I always felt a little bit left out, like why isn't anybody getting me? That kind of a feeling.
Sure.
And then for uni, same theme. I was doing my own kind of online business on the side while I was pursuing uni, and then I was playing a lot of League of Legends. Spent a lot of time on that. Didn't go to a lot of my classes, but I still managed to do all my courses. And then at that age, I was just really arrogant as well. So I I kind of said, hey, look, this is supposed to be the best business school in Sweden. And I spent 3 years, and everything we learned is from the past, like macroeconomics,
Yeah, sure.
microeconomics, supply demand. It's like from 100 years ago, stuff that was
Yeah.
invented in the industrial era.
100%. Yeah.
We're now not in the industrial era, we're in the information age. So what are we learning?
Sure.
And this was 2011, and I saw a couple of trends in 2011. One was if you look at the most valuable brands of the world back then, all the new brands on that list were tech companies like Microsoft, Apple, Google, Amazon. Okay, so tech companies. Tech companies created a lot of value in the last 30, 40 years, but we didn't learn anything about tech companies in the best business school in Sweden. Okay, second thing was e-commerce. I saw this graph where every year the amount of total retail spend online versus offline, online kept increasing. So I think in 2011 it was about 11% or 12% or something like that.
Yeah.
So in the best business school in Sweden, we learned nothing about e-commerce, which was going to be a big trend in the future. And then also back then, the Chinese economy was growing really quickly, and we spent zero time talking about business opportunities or the China market. So I'm like, hey, these are like three really big shifts in how we're going to do business in the future.
Yeah.
This is the best business school. Why didn't I learn any of this? If I really become successful in the future, should the school get any credit at all? So I'm not going to write my thesis.
Sure.
So that was my excuse, but I was actually just finding an excuse to play more League of Legends.
Right. Okay. So you it was a bit of activism in you, but you obviously wanted to go and play League of Legends. But everything
Yeah.
you've said is absolutely true, though, and it absolutely blows my mind. I mean, the education system is very much stuck in an era which doesn't exist anymore, and that's not just within business. That's within many, certain subjects. Of course, it doesn't adapt and change very much. You know what I mean?
And I think the world is changing
Oh,
faster and
100%.
faster.
Yeah, of course.
So education really needs to
The
start iterating.
pace is picking up, so that the rate of change is increasing.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's just like, so it's getting further away, isn't it? It's a bit like, so I mean, the labor market is a good example. So the education system is churning out people with skills, and the labor market is getting further and further away within the tech sector. So the gap between graduate and industry is broadening. So yeah, it's just an amazing conundrum that we're in between education and I mean, are you seeing that in the companies you've been involved with, Carl, in terms of hiring people? Are you seeing this increasing sort of gap between education and industry, certainly within the tech and manufacturing?
I'm not seeing that yet. I think we're still in quite an early stage of our company life cycle. And I would say in about 20% of what we do, we are reinventing the way we do things. So there's no existing talent on the market anyway to draw from. So internally, we set up a lot of experiments. We have hypotheses. Hey, we think this might work. So we try it, and then we learn and iterate.
Right.
So for that, we don't need people that are super experienced, but we just need smart people that are structured in their thinking.
So going back to yourself then. So I understand you, in terms of the beginning of your career then, you obviously left university, you were doing websites. You were earning money off the internet then when you were in your early teens, I suppose, like 12, 13, 14. So
under my mom's name.
Oh, really? Okay.
Because you couldn't get paid.
Sure, yeah, of course. Yeah.
If you were underage.
So you were getting paid through like a PayPal account or something, were you? Is that how it worked?
PayPal.
There's no crypto then, was there? So
no crypto, yeah.
So you did a fan website for a Chinese design company, yeah? And you got spotted sort of thing, and then they offered you a job, is that right?
Yeah, that was actually the first Chinese smartphone company.
Maozu?
Yeah, they made the first smartphone in China.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
So they were around the same time as the iPhone then, I suppose, the first iPhone, is that right?
It was after the iPhone. It was heavily inspired by the iPhone.
Yeah, sure. Heavily inspired, yeah. So is that what made you, or maybe catapulted you into an appreciation of good design? And did that start this journey that you went on towards setting up OnePlus?
Maybe it did, but I've always been an Apple fan for as long as I can remember.
Yeah.
And I think those products have made a much bigger impact on me when it comes to design and user experience.
Right.
Like I was the first kid in my school who bought the first iPod, first among my friends to get the iPhone. So I think those experiences had a much bigger impact. Like, I don't know if you remember with the first iPod, it had this round scroll wheel.
Yeah, sure,
like
of course, yeah.
Infinite scrolling. That was such a great user experience.
Yeah, absolutely. But you were obviously the first one though, Carl, because you were making so much money off the internet. Your friends probably were just living off pocket money at the time. So
yeah. So I definitely had a lot more gadgets than my friends.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, no, but I think that scrolling wheel was a game changer, wasn't it? Because up until then, it was just like this really sort of, well, it was just a button cursor that you would control it with, isn't it?
Hmm.
So I think that changed the game for sure. But so yeah, anyway, so you were working for Meizu, and then obviously you worked for a firm called Oppo, and then you met ultimately your co-founder, and then set up obviously OnePlus. Can you talk us through that period in your life? Why did you set the company up? What problem were you trying to solve? If that's the way you want to put it, and talk us through the first couple of years of that whole venture.
OnePlus was started by Oppo. So I worked at Oppo, and they saw a trend, and the trend was that more and more people are buying smartphones online versus purely offline,
Yeah, sure.
and they needed to also be online because their current business, their previous business, was very traditional, very offline centric. So they started this new brand called OnePlus, and I was just a kid, so I was really excited about this new journey. So I nagged my way into that team. But that team was supposed to be focused on the China market, but I nagged my way into being in charge of the international markets, so all the markets outside of China, because there was nobody else doing it anyway. So that it's all upside for the company. And after launching the first product, my part of the business became 2/3 of the overall company in terms of revenue.
Really? Good God.
So the China play failed actually, lost money, but the international side actually made money and grew much faster. So it was kind of like an accident. The original target market was China, but by accident, it became a very global brand.
Right. Why do you think that was then?
I wasn't running China, so I'm not going to comment on China. But for international, I think the reason why it really worked was we were the first to sell smartphones online, direct to consumer in the world.
Sure.
So we cut out the middleman, and we could deliver a really good product at a very compelling value proposition. And then we had a lot of disruptive marketing as well. So I think that really helped. We found a way of doing marketing at a very low cost and acquiring users at a very low cost.
Can you talk us through that? It'd be interesting for us to know what exactly, you did to get going on a relatively modest budget.
I think we did a couple of things that really worked out. So first, back then, so it's 10 years ago, smartphone brands were not supporting their devices very well in terms of software. So there were online communities that made custom software for phones to support the phones longer after the device makers stopped supporting them. So we partnered up with the biggest of these teams. They were called Cyanogen. They don't exist anymore. And they already had millions of fans online who are using their products on other phones. So we actually co-developed the first phone. They made the software, we made the hardware. And just by doing that partnership, we got access to all their millions of users. Instant kind of brand awareness from that community. And then we sold our products on an invite-only basis. So you had to be invited to buy it. It was not designed to go viral, but it was more for like a supply chain management point of view, but it really went viral. People were reselling it on eBay for a couple $100, not the product, but the invite to be able to buy the product. And then we designed it in a way where it kind of became the tool for users to help us refer their friends to buy our product. So a lot of the user acquisition was free and driven by our existing users.
Wow, that's really smart. Were you inspired by something you'd seen then, or was that something yourself and your team put together yourselves?
We were inspired by Gmail and Google Glass. When Gmail came out in the beginning, it was invite only. It worked really well. Whenever I got invites for Gmail, I would tell my friends, hey, I got 5 more invites. Do you want this invite? It's a really good email service.
Yeah.
So I definitely got that kind of mindset. So when there's some scarcity, you attribute more value to it.
Yeah, for sure. No, that makes total sense. So look, how do you start when, in terms of starting creating a hardware manufacturer and a hardware company? What's the sort of, at a very high level, Carl? I know there's a lot there's a lot to this, but I'm just saying at a very high level, how did you get going?
We did a lot. We had to build a team. I guess we were just selling to all the different stakeholders, selling to potential employees, why this could become something one day, to investors to get the capital to be able to hire people and make products, to the suppliers, because there's a lot of companies out there trying to make products, and the suppliers have to select who they want to work with because not all of them are going to be successful. I think the most challenging thing was actually working with supply chain because, for instance, our first product, we made earbuds, the Nothing Ear One, and we got challenged by almost everybody we met. They're like, hey, there's so many companies out there creating headphones and audio products. Why would you be different? How are you different? And why would it be successful? We just don't see it over and over again. So
Yeah.
convincing our suppliers to work with us, I would say, is probably the most important thing
Yeah, sure.
for a small company, young company.
I'm just very impressed and also very, I find it quite strange, okay, Carl, that there's not many companies like OnePlus out there. You know what I mean? It's like, I look at all the handset manufacturers, you got, they're just massive global conglomerates, you got Huawei and, Google and Apple and stuff like that. So, how on earth did you manage to survive, in the early days? Because it's a very, very dog eat dog world, isn't it? It's a very competitive market. Did you have any real low points where you thought this is over?
I think Nothing is at least 10 times harder than OnePlus, and the low points are at least 10 times lower.
Yeah, sure.
Because at OnePlus we had an owner, a bigger corporate owning us. So if we messed up, there's still money that they could scoop in and come and save us.
Yeah.
But now being an independent company, if you fail, you fail. There's no backup. There's no plan B. The stakes are way higher.
Yeah, no, for sure. Okay, then look. I mean, what advice do you give to young entrepreneurs about starting hardware companies? Then you must come across a couple. There's not as many of them around as there are in terms of software entrepreneurs. But what key pieces of advice do you give people who are starting a journey similar to what you went on with OnePlus and Nothing?
So I think I'm still in the early days of my journey as well, but it might look like I'm successful to younger people. But I think one thing that really set me apart from my peers from a very young age was that I always shipped stuff. I always tried stuff.
Yeah.
Now there might be some semi-recognizable names under my belt in terms of companies I've been involved with. But the amount of projects that I shipped that were so bad and didn't work at all, there's just so many more that nobody knows about. So I think one of the biggest differences between me and other young people now that I look at it is they just think about things. They just keep it in their mind, whereas I just kept putting things out there in the world.
Yeah, for sure. I noticed your Twitter profile reads "Let's make tech fun again." Okay, I thought that was a really cool strapline on there. But clearly, you're a little bit disillusioned about the lack of innovation within the hardware space. Is that the case? And what do you think has gone wrong?
Yeah, I was super optimistic about the future. Super optimistic about the tech-enabled future that would be better than the past. Because during my formative years, we saw a lot of innovation in our industry. We saw the birth of the smartphone, the iPhone, and all the other Android phones that came after that.
Yeah.
And those products just kept getting better and better every year, at least in the initial years when they were just invented. And then it was also the era where the web went from Web 1 to Web 2.0. So all of a sudden, everybody could be a contributor on the internet.
Sure.
Through blogging, through YouTube, social media. So there was just so much innovation when I was young. And I just thought that it would just continue getting better and better. But in the last couple of years, I would say 5 to 10 years, tech companies have gotten this perception of being evil. Governments and consumers don't really trust them anymore. They're accused of monopolistic behavior, unfair competition. Yeah. There's concerns around privacy and data, etc. So now the tech companies feel like the oil and gas companies of the past. And we're no longer inspired by tech companies. We no longer believe that the world will become a better place powered by Apple, Google, Facebook, and Meta and whatnot.
Yeah, sure.
So I think we should try and change that. Maybe we can change that. All these companies are huge now, especially when it comes to consumer technology. There's only Apple and Samsung and maybe a few big Chinese brands. And these big brands, it's not in their nature to try very different things because they already have an established business model. If they color outside of the lines too much, they're going to lose market share. It's going to have negative impact on their business.
Yeah, sure.
And then there's no startup in our industry. There's no small brand because it's just the barrier to entry is so high. So there's only us. So then we can do different things because we're small. We shouldn't do the same things as the big companies because then we can't compete with them. So people ask me, why are you in this really competitive industry? Sure, it's competitive, but also there's no competition. There's no competition because there's no other peer company that can be differentiated. So that's kind of how I think about it.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I think one thing I was really keen to get your thoughts on is the evolution. Going back to hardware, the evolution of smartphones. What is the next big evolution for smartphones? Do you think we'll interact with technology in a different way to having a phone in our hand, for example? Like a pair of glasses instead. We won't have phones anymore. We'll just have glasses or whatever. I don't know, contact lenses. What's your thought on the evolution of of smartphones and B of how we interact with technology on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, I think for smartphones, we're at the end of the innovation curve. There's always very steep change in the beginning, and then the change tapers off. I think we're at the end. The smartphone is not going to be significantly different today than, say, 5 years from now. But I think, if you ask the bigger question, is this the end of change for the way humans interact with computers?
Yeah.
And then the answer is definitely no. It's impossible to imagine that in all the foreseeable future ahead of us, human-computer interaction won't change or won't become more efficient. And I think technology always becomes more efficient over time. You're always able to accomplish more with less time or with less money or with less effort, empowered by technology. So if that's where things are going, then I would probably say that the contact lens you mentioned is more seamless than the goggles, right? I think long-term technology should disappear into the background, and it should enable us to become more human. It's everywhere, but also nowhere to be seen, so to speak.
Yeah, sure. It's so seamless. It becomes us. I mean,
Yeah.
Elon Musk, he said on a podcast last year about how we are actually, we're all, I think someone was asking him about cyborgs, and he sort of claimed we're already cyborgs because we have this external brain in our pocket all the time, And I think I just see the evolution of that becoming, maybe glasses next, contact lenses after that, and then potentially it's just a chip in our actual brains or something, whereby we just interact. The technology is literally a supplement to our brain.
Could be, or maybe the edges between what's a human and what's a machine also start to blur.
Yeah.
Over time.
Yeah, absolutely. What technology innovation are you most excited about in the world right now, Carl?
I think right now AI is a really hot topic, and everybody's talking about it. Everybody's thinking about it. We're also really excited about it because we think we are really well positioned to leverage this. The reason being that we have both hardware and software. And I think the best product experiences come when you marry hardware with software. There's a lot of teams that only have AI, but they don't really have the hardware. And hardware also gives you distribution.
Yeah.
So not only can you create more interesting user experiences, but you also have a lot of users that you can deploy it to. And all those users have a lot of data that you can use to train the AI models further. So that's something really exciting we're thinking about, but I think it's really important to have a very clear hypothesis on a product market fit before jumping into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's maybe come back to AI in a minute. I just want to talk about Nothing first. Why did you set up Nothing? Tell us a little bit about your products and your offering and what your vision is for the company.
The vision is very simple. We just want to make tech fun again. So by making the best tech products that we can possibly make for the younger and the more creative consumers, we want to make tech fun again. So over time, we change as a company. The first year, 2021, we only had a pair of earphones on the market. And last year, in 22, we released our first smartphone. The long-term vision is to have products that are more fun and better designed than the competition. There's always really interesting kind of interactions. Like on the phone, we have put more than 900 LED lights on the back that starts to form a new interface. So we want to enable people to use their screen less and use the back of the phone to deliver important notifications kind of in their peripheral vision. Yeah. So that's one of the things we're doing. But long term, I think we need to provide an alternative to users, to Apple. And if you look at Apple, they have hardware, they have software, they have services, and they also have content. So I think that's, longer term where we need to be driving our business. Our hardware company on its own is not worth anything. Yeah. There's no moats there's no recurring revenue. So we need to, over time, develop multiple revenue streams.
Absolutely. Let's come back to the AI thing then that we were talking about. So, how do your products, how are they going to utilize the development of AI to improve your products? Does that make sense? How are you going to embed things like ChatGPT or that capability into your products?
So I think, first of all, AI is already everywhere in smartphones, but the application has been quite boring. It's led to like 5% or 10% improvements and not disruptive improvements in terms of the user experience. So, for example, the smartphone cameras are all powered by AI because the sensors are so small on the smartphone. So you need software and computational photography to fill in the blanks
Right.
and make the photos better. So there's already
Yeah,
AI,
sure.
but you can't really tell that it got much better thanks to
Yeah.
it. If we're talking about the new wave of these kind of large language models and generative AI, I think that's definitely something we could leverage, but we haven't figured out the right product market fit right now.
Gotcha. Yeah.
We're building some prototypes of different products, leveraging AI that we can start testing with our community soon. But we don't know which one is going to work or not work. Maybe none of them work.
Well, what do you think about ChatGPT? I think it was one of those technologies for me, Carl, where I kind of remembered exactly where I was when I first had a fiddle around with it. I can remember my heart rate going up because I thought, "Wow, AI is properly." I know AI is all around us, but I mean, at this level, it felt like it like real AI had arrived. You know what I mean? In terms of like
Yeah.
this is a game changing stuff here. You know, did you have that
I,
feeling? And what do you see? This, you know, what is this triggered? Where's this gonna go?
I had a very similar feeling to you. It felt like similar to when the first iPhone came out.
Yeah, definitely. I had a similar feeling when I first saw Bitcoin as well. But I mean, those three stand out for me. But it was definitely in
Yeah.
that league, you know. So yeah,
I know that the world will change fundamentally. I know there's a lot of startups trying to find the best application of AI. I don't think anybody's found it yet, but you can see the capabilities improve so quickly. So we're also trying to think about, how we can be a part of it, but we just need to test and experiment to see what really works and sticks. But I do think this is gonna define this generation.
yeah. No, I think so. I think I completely agree. I mean, I think now like the capability of ChatGPT is only going to get better. So I think it's now a case of APIs, plugins, getting that capability into more practical ways of accessing it. You know what I mean? So, like for example, ChatGPT being available in your Outlook or your Gmail. You know what I mean? So you can just use it as an automated response mechanism for certain things. Or I mean, it's just about availability now for
Hmm.
that technology. Do you see what I mean? Do you agree with that? Is that something you're thinking about in terms of your own product development?
It's very hard to counter human nature. So all these scenarios we talked about, they're productivity scenarios. Like it makes your work life better. But I think humans are not wired like that. I think humans fundamentally only care about reproduction value and dopamine.
Definitely.
That's it, I think.
Yeah.
I think that's it. So I think the products need to tap into that if you want the product to really really take off. If it's just making your work more efficient, that's great, but I don't think it's gonna become a mass
No.
market product anytime soon.
No, it's something that I would appeal to me, but I agree that most people probably wouldn't care. So, what do you think about AI in terms of its impact on the education sector, and what do you think the repercussions and the impact of that's going to be?
I think AI is just another tool, just like back in the day when we invented all the basic tools, like like the hammer or the pencil, and we just so I think schools should teach people how to leverage and how to think about this. Because I remember when I just started playing with ChatGPT, actually writing the right prompt takes getting used to. Like, how do you prompt it in the best possible way to get the best outcome? So I think that schools should teach people how to leverage the new technology It's just a new tool. We shouldn't be afraid of it.
Yeah, for sure. But that does throw up an interesting conundrum, though. Is it going to change what we value? And you talked about it there. So if I'm able to basically with ChatGPT ask the right prompts, then therefore, if I'm up against the greatest blog writer in the world, if I'm able to ask the right prompts, then obviously I can probably knock out more content than they ever can. So therefore,
Yeah.
my skill set is more valuable than theirs, even though I can't
Yeah.
write blogs. Do you see what I mean? So you take that into the education world. I mean, are we going to start targeting people and training them to interact with technology more, and maybe less so teach them to actually deliver the work themselves? You know what I mean? And it's a different value proposition, isn't it?
But that provides a lot more leverage on your time, right?
Yeah.
So the productivity increases. And I think the trend with technology is that it always increases productivity over time.
Yeah, sure.
So, yeah, we get detached from the art of writing, but we're able to accomplish much more as a species.
100%. But I just don't think that most people will see it like that. I've basically showed people ChatGPT and they think, oh, that's amazing. And then they just don't use it. Do you see what I mean? I mean, there's not that many people who go, wow, and then start thinking and then actually use it and have an
Yeah.
applicable use case for it. What about the jobs and in terms of the labor market? Where do you think this is going to go, Carl? AI is inevitably going to take a lot of jobs. How do you see that playing out?
I personally think it's just going to reallocate the job market. So a lot of jobs will disappear, but there will be new jobs that are invented to leverage this technology.
That's
So
what
I think
normally happens, isn't it?
yeah, I think it's just going to be a reconfiguration of the labor market, and those who learn, people who learn and adapt,
Yeah.
they're going to come out ahead, and those who don't are going to come out behind.
Do you not think it's different this time though? I mean, because that's what's always happened. I mean, when in the industrial revolution, the machinery created new jobs. The digital revolution, code created new jobs. But this is different, isn't it? I mean, or is it different? I don't know. Maybe it's not. It is difficult to think about what jobs are going to be created when we've got all manual administrative tasks being completed by an algorithm, essentially.
Yeah,
So it's going to be
it's
interesting.
exciting though.
It is.
It's scary.
It is
and also
scary,
exciting.
yeah. It's scary, but I am very excited by it. Yeah, I have to say.
I don't know the answers either, but just based on previous pattern, when there's a new technology or a new tool, the market changes, and I don't see this more as more than a tool for now. But maybe my point of view might also change with time.
Yeah, for sure. So where do you see yourself in and Nothing in 5 years?
I think the number one thing for a new business is to survive. So hopefully we're still around. I've noticed the longer you just survive, the more opportunities are they come to you. So
Yeah, sure.
right now we are in two major product categories. One is the phone market, the other one is the audio market. Both are huge industries, and we're just like very very small fish in both. So we in 5 years we really need to increase our market share in both of these categories, and we shouldn't be pigeonholing ourselves to just be a phone brand or an audio brand. We need to keep exploring and making more innovative new products. So as we pursue market share in these two mature categories, we should experiment with new product categories on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you've got to keep innovating, Carl, haven't you? Otherwise, you get left behind. So, looking back,
Yep.
I know you're not done yet, and you're still a young man. But looking back now to the beginning of your career, when you dropped out of university around that time of your life, what advice would you give to that guy? What advice would you give to your young self?
Follow your gut. I think my gut feeling has been pretty good. I remember going on a walk after uni with a few friends. I didn't have a job and I wasn't in school. And I made this schedule for myself, like 5 things I need to do for an hour each day. I don't know if you've seen this, but Jerry Seinfeld, the
I know, yeah.
comedian,
Yeah.
he had this calendar on his wall, and every time he did something, he checked a day. So he would build a streak. Okay, now I had a 20-day streak. I can't miss day 21 because then I'll break my 20-day streak. So I did something similar where I was learning programming, learning a guitar, going to the gym, and like I had 5 things I had to do every day, and I was building that streak.
Yeah.
And then we were on a walk with a few friends, and they were like, "Hey, what are you doing with your life?" I said, "I don't know. I'm just learning some new stuff, and they said, "Why don't you have a job?" I said, "What job should I get? There's no job that's interesting." And they're like, "Just get any job. That like just get a job." And I'm like, "What? That's the strangest thing. Like, why would I put my time just to get on getting any job?"
Sure.
So in hindsight, those instincts were correct. I just followed my heart to
Yeah.
do what I wanted to do, and some of my strange theories started making sense over
Yeah,
time.
no, absolutely. It's funny that, isn't it? I mean, I empathize with that. That kind of makes a lot of sense. I think it's funny how some people just don't seem to value time that much or their own time. And I think as you get older, you realize that time is your main value proposition.
Yeah.
It's not money; it's actually time. What sort of productivity and organization advice would you give our listeners in terms of staying on track, staying productive?
I think inbox zero is really important. It's hard, but
It
it's
is hard,
important.
yeah. Yeah.
I think it's a muscle you can train up. I think if you run a company, I think the analogy of running the company like a machine is a good analogy. I think Ray Dalio used that analogy as well. Like you build a machine and then you iterate on that machine.
Yeah.
So I think if you run a company, the operating system of the company or the operating system of the machine is the meeting setup. Like what kind of meetings do you have on a regular basis to operate which part of the business? I'm very unhappy if anybody changes regular meeting without ample kind of analysis to why.
Yeah, absolutely. How do you achieve equilibrium in your life, Carl? You're obviously a very busy person. How do you switch off? What do you do to switch off from work?
I don't. It's
I
too
just work all the
early.
time.
It's too early in our startup journey, I
Yeah,
think. But I'm
sure.
trying. I try to work out as much as possible.
Mm.
I try to on the weekends get a massage or go to the sauna. I try to hang out with friends, but I don't think things are balanced yet.
They will be one day, maybe then. So,
One
what
day, yeah.
what book or story or documentary or something, anecdote, what have you been inspired by recently?
I just watched Creed 3. It's kind of cheesy, but
Any good?
you don't have to spend a lot of mental energy watching it. But I got motivated to work out harder after watching that movie.
Ah, cool. Yeah.
But perhaps on a deeper, or more serious note, there's this book called Atmamun, Atma, Atma, Mun, Mun, and it's some kind of modern take on Himalayan Buddhism.
Really?
It's
Okay.
very easy to read. It's not very long, but oftentimes in that book, I like the chapters are so profound that I have to stop and just really think about the chapter that I just read
Yeah, sure.
and what it means. The one concept that really made an impact on me was realizing, waking up to the fact that you're gonna die. Like
Right.
people know it conceptually, but they don't really stop to think about what it really means.
Of course.
And when you understand what it really means, then all that there's left to do is to play.
Yes. I think it also makes you more, well, as we were talking about, it makes you value your time more, doesn't it? If you think
Hmm.
about your own mortality and you think about how long you've actually got left, it makes you think, good God, all these things I want to do, I better hurry up, Just stop
Yeah.
wasting time, you know?
Also being more fearless or shameless and having more fun
Yeah,
because
sure.
who cares what other people think?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. 100%. But look, Carl, I've really enjoyed chatting to you. I think it's been a fascinating exchange. We've covered some really good ground, and I'm sure our listeners will really enjoy this one. So thank you so much for coming on the Tech Leaders podcast.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed my time as well.
That was great. Love that. Carl, super interesting character. We've had predominantly software and services people on, never a hardware guy. So when this opportunity came up, we were all over it, and I was really excited to talk to Carl. It really felt like there was lots there. I just had to scratch beneath the surface to extract it from Carl. But when he got into his flow, there was some amazing nuggets of wisdom. But the three I could pick from, there's a lot to choose from here, but there were three things that really did stand out for me. The first one was building a new brand in the early days of OnePlus on a shoestring budget. Carl explained the structure and ecosystem that they created to essentially get disproportionate attention from the marketplace. And it just shows if you focus, you pay attention to what's around you, then you can still, well, even though this was 10 years ago and things have changed, obviously, but nonetheless, I think he demonstrated that you can build a brand on a shoestring budget if you know what you're doing. I thought this was fascinating. The other one was, and this was something I really wasn't expecting this, Carl, I obviously asked Carl about leadership, what makes good leadership, as I always ask guests, and he immediately placed emphasis on winning, being a winner. People follow winners. They get inspired by winners. It's not the fluffiest answer I've ever had, but nonetheless, you can't argue with it. And I thought it was a unique answer. I've not had an answer like that before to that question. And I thought it was really interesting. And it does say a lot about Carl. He is a winner. And clearly, he's won in business. And I think that is infectious. So I thought it was a really good answer. The last one is Carl's views on AI replacing jobs. Massive topic. Carl is unconcerned about it, seemingly. I think basically, I do understand what he's saying. This is what generally happens when technology replaces jobs. The jobs just change and the labor market moves on, and but it continues to grow. I challenged him a bit on this and said, it feels different this time, but he was quite clear. He didn't think that was the case. And that, the jobs market is just going to evolve like it always does. And that's difficult to build a case against. So, Carl, great guy. Really enjoyed this one. A brilliant guest, all around brilliant guest. But thank you for downloading. I really enjoyed this one. I hope you did. It's Carl Pay. So I just want to take this opportunity to thank you for downloading this episode. We really love doing this show and are absolutely humbled by all of the incredible people who download and listen, plus the incredible guests who take the time to come on and share their secrets and experiences with our listeners. Please, can I ask that you take a couple of seconds to subscribe or follow the show? This small action means a lot to us and helps us greatly. Thank you. As you quite possibly have heard me mentioning in the past, we record the mass majority of our episodes at an amazing studio facility here in Cardiff at Tramshed Tech. Tramshed Tech is a collaborative community of entrepreneurs and scaling businesses geared towards supporting growth in tech, digital and creative industries across an ever-increasing collection of locations and partner locations, UK-wide and internationally. It really is the perfect place for your business to start up, scale up, accelerate, or innovate. Head over to tramshedtech.co.uk or just search Tramshed Tech on your favorite social media platform.